They were afraid of almost everything. This was not an insult or a joke. It was simply a fact written in their bones and blood and the very shape of their souls. For millions of years, their ancestors had survived on a world called Velar Prime by running away from danger. They had no claws to fight with. They had no fangs to bite with. They had no poison or armor or great size. What they had was fear, and fear had kept them alive. There had been a gentle place. The skies were soft purple, and the grass was blue-green, and the rain fell warm and slow. The most dangerous creature on the entire planet was something like a fat cat with extra legs. It was not very fast and not very smart, and they had learned long ago to simply run away when they saw one. This worked well for them. Over time, they grew smart. They built cities and wrote books and learned to make machines. But they never lost their fear. It was too deep inside them, woven into every thought and every dream. Even in their great cities with walls and guards and warning systems, they still jumped at loud noises. They still felt their hearts race when someone approached from behind. They still slept in piles, pressing close to each other for comfort against the terrors of the night. They were small creatures, barely 4 feet tall when fully grown. Their bodies were covered in soft fur that could shift to brown or white depending on the season. They had large amber eyes that could see well in dim light, and tall pointed ears that swiveled toward every sound. Their faces looked something like a fox from Earth, though they had never heard of foxes. Their legs bent backward at the knee, ending in small paws with soft pads. They had long, fluffy tails that they wrapped around themselves when they were scared, which was most of the time. The wider galaxy had many names for them. Some species called them the runners. Others called them the soft ones, but most simply called them the cubs because they looked like baby animals even when they were fully grown. Their big eyes and trembling ears and the way they huddled together made other species think of children, of young ones who needed protection. They did not mind this name. They knew what they were. They knew they were not warriors or hunters or anything fierce. They were survivors, and they survived by being careful and quiet and very, very afraid. For a long time, this was enough. Then their sun began to die. The scientists discovered it first. The star that had warmed Velar Prime for billions of years was growing old and sick. It would not explode or do anything dramatic. It would simply grow dim and cold, slowly freezing their world over thousands of years. They would not live to see the end, but there would. And theirs would live on a world of ice and darkness, where nothing could grow and nothing could survive. They were afraid of this. They were very afraid, but fear had always made them clever, had always made them find ways to survive. So they built ships, great colony ships that could carry their people across the stars to find a new home. It took them 100 years to build enough ships for everyone. 100 years of work and worry and the slow creeping knowledge that their world was dying beneath their feet. The last ship to leave was called the Sanctuary's Hope. It was not the biggest ship or the fastest ship, but it carried something precious. It carried 12,000, including 300 young ones, 300 cubs who had never known anything but the inside of the ship, who had been born in metal corridors and raised under artificial lights. These cubs were different from the ones who had lived on Velar Prime. They were more nervous, more jumpy, more afraid. The ship was full of strange noises and sudden movements. The engines hummed and groaned. The lights flickered sometimes. The walls creaked when the ship changed speed. Every sound was a possible danger, and the cubs had learned to fear them all. Among these cubs was a young female named. Was 16 cycles old, which made her almost an adult by standards. She had soft fur and large golden eyes and ears that never stopped moving, always listening for threats. She was small even for her species, barely 3.5 feet tall, and she had a nervous habit of wrapping her tail around her leg when she was worried. She was worried a lot. Was the eldest of her family group, which meant she was responsible for the younger cubs. Her brother was 14 cycles, old enough to help but still young enough to need watching. Her sister Myra was 12, suspicious of everything and everyone. And then there were the little ones. Cousin Pip was only 4 cycles, small and curious and always asking questions. Cousin was 6, quiet and scared and prone to nightmares. There were 2 others as well, both around 10 cycles, who clung to whenever anything frightening happened. This was often. Loved her family, but sometimes the weight of taking care of them felt like too much. She was afraid all the time, just like everyone else. She jumped at noises and flinched at shadows and felt her heart pound whenever the ship made an unexpected sound. But she could not show her fear because the little ones were watching. If she was scared, they would be scared. If she panicked, they would panic. So she swallowed her fear and pretended to be calm, even when her whole body was screaming at her to run. It was exhausting. The ship had been traveling for 3 years now, jumping from star to star on its long journey to their new home. A planet called New Velar, chosen by the Galactic Assembly specifically for a gentle world with soft grass and warm rain, like the home they had lost. It was still 2 years away, and sometimes wondered if she would survive that long. Not because of any physical danger, but because the constant fear was wearing her down, grinding away at her soul like water wearing away stone. Then the message came. The ship's council had sent a request to the Galactic Assembly asking for help. The journey was long and difficult, and the sanctuary's hope had limited supplies and even more limited defenses. They needed assistance. They needed protection. They needed someone to help them survive the dangerous parts of space that lay between them and their new home. The Assembly responded. They would send a ship from the human coalition, carrying supplies and technical support, and a single crew member who would serve as a guardian during the journey. This human would live aboard the sanctuary's hope, would help them with repairs and problems, would protect them from any dangers they might face. The council accepted the offer. They did not have much choice, but they were nervous about it, and so was everyone else. Humans were strange creatures. The galactic databases had information about them, and none of it was comforting. They were described as persistence predators, which meant they hunted by chasing their prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They had forward-facing eyes like all predators did. They could eat almost anything, including meat. They were bigger than, stronger than, and they had an unusual tolerance for pain and injury that other species found disturbing. There were stories about humans. Some said they had conquered their own planet by killing everything else on it. Some said they could run for days without stopping. Some said they had no fear at all, that they would walk toward danger instead of away from it. They did not know which stories were true, but all of them were frightening. Tried not to think about it. She had enough to worry about without adding a scary alien to the list. But the cubs would not stop talking about it, their little voices high and anxious as they discussed what the human might look like and what it might do. Pip was the most curious. He wanted to know everything. What did humans eat? How did they sleep? Did they really not have fur? Did they really chase things until they died? Answered his questions as best she could, but she did not have many answers. None of them had ever met a human in person. They only had the stories, and the stories were not helpful. The day the human ship arrived, the whole colony was tense. Could feel it in the air, a kind of electric anxiety that made everyone move faster and speak softer. The adults gathered near the docking area, but they stayed far back from the airlock, pressed against the walls with their ears flat and their tails wrapped tight. The cubs were supposed to stay in the family quarters, but they had crept out to watch, unable to resist their curiosity. Let them come, she understood. She wanted to see too, even though she was scared. Maybe especially because she was scared. The not knowing was almost worse than knowing. The airlock hissed and groaned as the two ships connected. There was a long moment of silence, and then the inner door began to open. Held her breath. The human who stepped through was not what she had expected. In her mind, she had built a picture of something huge and terrible. A monster with claws and fangs, with muscles bulging under skin, with eyes that burned with hunger. She had imagined something that looked like death itself, walking on two legs. The reality was different. The human was a female, thought, though it was hard to tell with an alien species. She was taller than them, maybe 5.5 feet, but that was not as tall as had imagined. She was not huge or hulking. She had brown skin, a warm color like tree bark, and her hair was dark and curly, pulled back from her face in a thick bundle. Her eyes were brown too, warm and bright, and they crinkled at the corners as she looked around at the assembled. She was smiling. This was confusing. Had expected many things from a human, but a smile was not one of them. The smile looked real too. It reached the human's eyes and softened her whole face, making her look almost friendly. The human wore simple clothes, a jumpsuit with pockets and a patch on the shoulder. She carried a bag over one shoulder, heavy but not huge. She moved slowly, carefully, as if she knew that fast movements might scare the. When she spoke, her voice was soft and calm. "Hello," she said. "My name is, you can call me Danny. I'm here to help." The council leader was an elderly male named Solas. He was respected for his wisdom and his calm, but even he looked nervous as he stepped forward to greet the human. His ears were trembling slightly, and his tail was wrapped so tightly around his leg that wondered if it hurt. "We welcome you," Solas said. His voice was steady, though, which was impressive. "We are grateful for the assistance of the human coalition. Our ship and our people are in your care." The human nodded. She seemed to understand the weight of what Solas was saying. "I'll do everything I can to get you safely to New Velar. You have my word." Then she did something that made the entire crowd flinch. She crouched down. It was a simple movement, just bending her knees and lowering herself toward the floor. But it looked like the start of a pounce. Several of the adults made small sounds of fear and felt her own heart jump into her throat. But the human did not pounce. She just kept lowering herself until she was sitting on her heels, her head now at the same level as the smallest cubs. She did not reach toward them. She did not make any sudden movements. She just made herself smaller, less threatening, and then she smiled again. "Hey there," she said, her voice even softer than before. "I know I probably look pretty strange to you. That's okay. You can take all the time you need to get used to me." The cubs had crowded behind's legs when the human crouched, but now they were peeking out, their big eyes filled with a mix of fear and curiosity. Pip, of course, was the bravest. He crept forward a few steps, his little nose twitching. His mother made a sound of alarm, reaching for him, but Pip was already moving. He stopped a few feet from the human and stared at her with his head tilted to one side. "You don't have fur," he said. The human laughed. It was a warm sound, not scary at all. "Nope," she agreed. "Just a little bit on my head, pretty weird, huh?" "Does it hurt?" Pip asked. "Not having fur?" "Not at all. I was born this way. Most humans don't have much fur." Pip considered this information seriously. Then he asked the question that knew was coming, the question that was burning in every mind. "Are you going to eat us?" A wave of horrified silence spread through the crowd. Several adults looked like they wanted to grab Pip and run away. Felt her face grow hot with embarrassment, even though she had been wondering the same thing. But the human just laughed again. There was no anger in it, no offense, just genuine amusement and something that looked like understanding. "No, little one," she said. "I promise I'm not going to eat anyone. Humans don't eat people. We're here to help you find your new home, that's all." Pip's ears, which had been pressed flat against his skull, slowly began to rise. "Oh," he said, "that's good." "Yeah," the human agreed. "It is good." She stood up slowly, giving everyone time to adjust to her movement. Then she looked around at the assembled, her expression serious but kind. "I know you're all scared," she said. "That's okay. I'd be scared too if some big alien showed up on my ship, but I want you to know that I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm here to help, and I'm going to do my best to earn your trust, even if it takes a while." Solas nodded. "We will do our best to make you comfortable as well. Our customs may be strange to you." "I'm looking forward to learning them," the human said. "I've always liked learning new things." And that was how came to live among the. The first few days were strange for everyone. Danny was given quarters near the family units, close enough that she could respond quickly if there was an emergency, but far enough that they had space to feel safe. She spent most of her time learning the ship, walking through the corridors and making notes about systems that needed repair. The cubs watched her constantly. They were like little shadows, peeking around corners and gathering in clusters to observe her from what they thought was a safe distance. They whispered to each other about her strange, flat teeth and her weird eyes and the way she sometimes smiled at nothing. They made up theories about what she was thinking, what she was planning, whether she was actually dangerous or just pretending to be nice. Watched too, but for different reasons. She was the unofficial liaison between the human and the cubs, mostly because she was the only young who did not immediately run away when Danny approached. It was not that was brave. She was terrified every time she saw the human. But she was also curious, and she was responsible for the little ones, and she could not protect them if she did not understand the possible threat. So she stayed close, she observed, she learned. Danny was patient. That was the first thing noticed. The human never seemed frustrated by this constant fear, never got angry when someone ran away from her, never raised her voice or moved too fast. She just kept being calm and quiet and gentle day after day. She learned their customs quickly. Never approach from behind because it would scare them. Always announce yourself before entering a room so no one would be startled. Keep your voice low and your movements slow. Make yourself small when talking to cubs. Never reach toward someone without asking first. These were simple rules, but most aliens did not bother to learn them. They thought they were being silly, being too sensitive, being bobbies. They got impatient and frustrated and sometimes angry. But Danny never did. She just adjusted her behavior and kept trying. One day, about a week after her arrival, found herself watching Danny repair a broken water filter in one of the common areas. The cubs were gathered nearby, pretending to play but really just staring at the human. Sat a little apart from them, her tail wrapped around her leg, trying to understand what she was seeing. "You're very patient," she said finally. "Most beings would be frustrated by now. The cubs run away every time you try to talk to them." Danny did not look up from her work. Her hands were steady as she connected wires and adjusted settings. "They're scared," she said simply. "That's not their fault. I'd be scared too if some giant alien showed up on my ship." "We're not that small," said a little defensive. Danny smiled. "No, you're not, but I'm pretty big compared to you, and I'm from a species you've never met before. Fear is a reasonable response." She glanced at her eyes warm. "Besides, I like kids, always have. I used to work at a youth center back on Earth." "What is a youth center?" "A place where young humans can go when they're not in school. We'd help them with homework, play games, teach them skills." Danny's hands kept working, but her voice grew softer, thoughtful. "A lot of the kids who came to us were dealing with hard stuff at home. Parents who were sick or poor or just not very good at being parents. The kids needed somewhere safe to be, somewhere they could relax and be themselves." His ears tilted forward, interested despite herself. "You chose to spend your time with frightened young ones." "I chose to spend my time helping people who needed help," Danny corrected gently. "The age didn't matter, the need did." That night told the other cubs about the youth center. They listened with wide eyes, struggling to understand what she was saying. A predator species that took care of frightened children? That did not fit with anything they knew about the universe. "Maybe it's a trick," Myra said. She was always the most suspicious one. "Maybe she's trying to make us trust her so she can hurt us later." "She's been here for 7 days," pointed out. "She hasn't hurt anyone." "Maybe she's waiting for the right moment." "Or maybe," said slowly, "she's telling the truth." The cubs did not know what to believe. Neither did, but something about the human felt different from what she had expected. Different in a way she could not quite explain. She decided to keep watching. The days turned into weeks, and slowly, very slowly, things began to change. The cubs stopped running away quite so quickly when Danny appeared. They started lingering a little longer, watching her a little more openly. They began asking questions, timid at first but growing bolder over time. Pip was the bravest, as always. He started following Danny around the ship, keeping a safe distance but always watching. He asked her endless questions about Earth, about humans, about everything he could think of. Danny answered all of them with patience and good humor, never making fun of him for his curiosity. "Why do your eyes face forward?" Pip asked one day. "Because humans evolved to hunt," Danny said calmly. "Forward-facing eyes help us judge distances better so we can catch things." Pip's ears flattened. "So you are a predator?" "My ancestors were, yes. A long time ago, before we learned to grow food and build cities. Humans used to hunt animals for meat." Danny saw the fear in Pip's eyes and added quickly, "But we don't hunt people. We never did. And these days, most humans don't hunt at all. We get our food from farms and stores, just like you do." "But you could hunt if you wanted to." "I suppose I could, But I don't want to. I'd rather make friends than catch dinner. Pip thought about this for a moment. Then he said, I'm glad you don't want to eat us. Danny smiled. Me too, little one, me too. Watched these conversations from a distance, learning more about the human with every passing day. Danny was strong but gentle. She was confident but humble. She was patient in a way that seemed almost impossible, willing to answer the same questions over and over again without getting annoyed. But there was something else too, something only caught glimpses of in quiet moments when Danny thought no one was watching. A sadness in her eyes, a heaviness in the way she sometimes sat alone, staring at nothing. A sense of loneliness that made her heart ache even though she did not understand it. One evening found herself sitting near Danny in the observation lounge. The room had large windows that looked out at the stars, and it was a popular place for who wanted a moment of peace. Danny was alone, staring out at the darkness, her reflection ghostly in the glass. Hesitated, then approached. Her heart was pounding, but she made herself keep walking until she was close enough to speak. May I sit here? Danny looked up, surprised but pleased. Of course, please. Sat down, keeping a careful distance between them. For a while, neither of them spoke. They just watched the stars together, two very different creatures sharing a moment of quiet. Do you miss it? Asked finally. Your home. Danny was quiet for a moment. Sometimes, she said. Earth is beautiful in ways I can't really describe. Blue skies, green trees, oceans that stretch to the horizon. It's very different from space. Why did you leave? Because there are people out here who need help. Danny turned to look at, her brown eyes soft. I joined the humanitarian corps because I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to use my life for something that mattered. And right now, what matters is getting you and your people safely to your new home. His ears flattened slightly. We're not very interesting, we just run away from everything. That's not true, Danny's voice was firm but kind. You're survivors. Your whole species survived the death of your son and built ships to carry you across the galaxy. That's not running away. That's fighting for your future. We didn't fight, we just fled. Danny leaned forward slightly, her expression serious. Fighting doesn't always mean violence. Sometimes fighting means refusing to give up. Sometimes it means doing whatever it takes to protect the ones you love. Your people looked at a dying son and said, we're not going to let this destroy us. That takes courage. Did not know what to say. No one had ever described thee as courageous before. It felt strange, like wearing clothes that did not quite fit. I don't feel courageous, she admitted. I feel scared all the time. That's what courage is, Danny said gently. Being scared and doing it anyway. If you weren't scared, it wouldn't take any bravery to act. It's the fear that makes it count. Thought about this for a long time after Danny left. She thought about it as she gathered the cubs for their evening meal, as she helped the little ones wash up and get ready for sleep, as she lay in the communal pile with her siblings and cousins pressed warm against her sides. Was it possible that she had been brave all along? Was it possible that taking care of the cubs, day after day, even when she was terrified, counted as courage? She did not know, but for the first time in her life, she wanted to believe it might be true. The ship continued on its journey, carrying its precious cargo of 12,000 frightened souls. And somewhere in the middle of it all, a human and a young began to build something that neither of them had expected. A friendship. It started small, a shared meal here, a conversation there. Danny would ask about customs and would explain them, would ask about human history, and Danny would tell stories about Earth. They talked about their families, their dreams, their fears. Danny was surprised to learn that had never seen real grass or felt real rain. All she knew was the ship, the metal corridors and recycled air and artificial light. The very concept of weather was strange to her, something she had read about but never experienced. Was surprised to learn that Danny had lost her parents when she was young. A car accident, Danny called it, involving machines that humans used to travel on Earth. She had been raised by her grandmother, a fierce old woman who had taught her to be strong and kind. She sounds wonderful, said. She was, Danny agreed. She died a few years ago, cancer. That's a disease that makes cells in your body grow wrong." She paused, her eyes distant. "She was the one who told me to join the Corps. She said I had too much love in me to waste it on just one planet." His ears folded back in sympathy. "I'm sorry you lost her." "Thanks," Danny smiled sadly. "But in a way, I haven't. She's still with me in everything I do. Every time I help someone, I feel like I'm honoring her memory." The cubs noticed the friendship growing between and the human. At first, they were nervous about it. Some of them thought was being foolish, trusting a predator. But as the weeks passed, they began to relax. If trusted Danny, maybe they could too. Pip was the first to make direct contact. One day, without any warning, he walked right up to Danny and reached out to touch her hand. Danny froze, careful not to move and startle him. Pip ran his small fingers over her skin, feeling the strange smoothness where fur should have been. "It's warm," he said, surprised. "I thought it would be cold." "Humans are warm-blooded," Danny said softly. "Our bodies make their own heat just like yours." "It feels nice." Pip looked up at her with his big amber eyes. "Can I touch your hair?" Danny lowered her head so he could reach. Pip buried his small hands in her curls, feeling the texture, the way the strands bounced back when he let go. "It's like very soft rope," he declared. Danny laughed. "I've never heard it described that way, but sure, very soft rope." After that, the barriers began to fall faster. The cubs started approaching Danny on their own, asking to touch her hair or her skin or her clothes. They wanted to know about her strange flat teeth and her weird eyes and the way she walked on flat feet instead of paws. Danny answered all their questions and let them examine her as much as they wanted. She started teaching them games, simple things that human children played. Catch with a soft ball she had brought from Earth. Hide and seek, which the cubs were surprisingly good at. Clapping games and singing games and silly word games that made them laugh. The laughter was new. The cubs had always been too scared to really laugh before, but something about Danny made them feel safe enough to be silly, safe enough to play, safe enough to be children. Watched all of this with growing wonder. The human was changing her people, slowly but surely, not by being threatening or demanding, but by being kind and patient and gentle. She was teaching them that not everything in the universe was dangerous, that sometimes someone different could also be someone good. One evening after the cubs had gone to sleep, found Danny sitting alone in the observation lounge again. The human looked tired but content, her eyes soft as she watched the stars. "Thank you," said. Danny looked up surprised. "For what?" "For being kind to us, for not giving up when we ran away from you, for teaching the cubs to laugh." Paused, struggling to find the right words. "You didn't have to do any of that. You could have just done your job and kept your distance, but you didn't." Danny smiled. "Keeping my distance wouldn't have been doing my job. My job is to take care of you, all of you, and you can't take care of someone from far away." Most beings don't see it that way. Most beings haven't spent as much time with scared kids as I have. Danny patted the seat next to her, an invitation, hesitated only a moment before accepting it. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course." "When I first got this assignment, a lot of people warned me about your species. They said they were timid and jumpy and hard to connect with. They said I would probably spend the whole trip being avoided and feared." Danny shook her head. "They were wrong. You're not timid. You're cautious. You're not hard to connect with. You just need someone who's willing to be patient. And you're not something to be afraid of. You're something to be protected." Felt warmth spread through her chest, a feeling she did not have words for. "No one has ever said that about us before." "Then everyone else has been wrong." Danny reached out and gently touched his shoulder. "You're survivors, you're fighters in your own way, and I'm proud to be traveling with you." Did not know what to say, so she just sat there in the glow of the stars, feeling something she had never felt before. Safe. Not the fragile, temporary safety of hiding from danger, but a deeper safety, the kind that came from knowing someone was watching over you. Someone strong and kind and good. She looked at the human sitting beside her and thought about everything that had happened since Danny arrived. The fear and the curiosity, the slow building of trust, the laughter and the games and the conversations that went late into the night. Something had changed, realized, not just in the cubs, but in herself. She was still afraid, still anxious, still watching for danger around every corner. But now she was not alone. She had a friend, a strange, furless, forward-eyed friend who had crossed the stars to help her people. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The ship sailed on through the darkness, carrying its cargo of hope and fear and 12,000 hearts that were slowly learning to be brave. And at the center of it all, a human and a young sat together, watching the stars, dreaming of a future they might share. Neither of them knew what was coming. Neither of them knew how hard the journey would become, or what they would have to sacrifice to reach their destination. But in that moment, none of that mattered. In that moment, there was just the warmth of friendship and the light of distant stars, and the quiet knowledge that they were not alone. It was enough. For now, it was enough.